I've been mayor for 5. I've been elected office for 9. And for some strange reason, I'm running for re-election to do this for 3 more years. But I know nothing about selling homes. I only know what we have in towns in terms of the vacancies and how fast things are turning over. I saw a market report yesterday, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it said something to the effect of last year that the time on market was about 30 to 35 days, and this year it's about 60 to almost 70 days.
Depends on the pricing.
Single-family homes,
You
Washington
bet,
Township.
yes,
Now, this is
yep.
just for my town.
Yep.
Some other elected officials send me this type of data all the time. I try to look at and try to, just the time on market. While the home prices are the median prices are going up a little bit, the sale prices are going down a little bit. So one of the things that kind of separates and what makes our town a little bit unique is that pretty much what you see is what you get in Washington Township. It hasn't changed much the way it looks in 10 years, and it's not going to change 10 years from now. And that's for some good reasons and some bad reasons. The good reasons are we have a lot of control over what the development can happen in our town. There are really only 2 parcels left in town, and I'll talk about those briefly, that have the potential for some residential development. And the rest of the town is pretty much in highlands. Highlands preservation, about 85% of the town. So we couldn't, there's always this town, we're building warehouses, and the rumors, you guys gave me a Patch article. Anyone here work for the Patch? No. These people drive me absolutely batty. Every once in a while, I think it's kind of like, even a blind squirrel finds a nut. They have a report that's actually accurate. The problem is, then they put it on social media and it goes, crazy town, and people think we're gonna, case in point, last month they posted an article about Parker Road, and how the township was gonna put a bomb factory on there, in place of what was there, and that was only partially true. It was a bomb factory in World War II, and we were looking at possibly redeveloping it, so they got half of it right, but it gets people involved in what we do in town. So, as I talk about the 2 parcel developments, so like I said, most of our town, about almost 90% of our rateables in town are single-family homes. So when we affect the property taxes in terms of our elected body, we're really affecting homeowners. We don't have the luxury of Chester Borough or Mount Olive. We can say, okay, we have a lot of commercial rateables. We just don't have those. So property taxes are a key issue for the governing body in our town, and since I've been in office, we have every single year kept our portion of the property taxes, and that's the key word, right? Our portion of the property taxes to below cost of living increases, so 2% or low. This year, everything went sideways. I know that Mike and Ganamort, the mayor of Chester Township, was here, I don't know if it was last month or the month before, and all the mayors in this area were all fighting this battle with Trenton. And part of that is Trenton did something really, really good for public employees. They said, we're going to increase your benefits this year. What they didn't tell them is that who's going to pay for that. The municipalities are going to pay for that. They didn't tell them that, and they didn't tell us that until we got into the budget this year. And what they said was, we're going to increase pension and benefits for retirees, for state employees, but the municipalities are going to pay for it. Hey, yay Trenton, thank you very much, Governor, and all of our elected officials that did that to us. But what it did to our municipal budget was automatically, before we even sharpened a pencil, increased our budget by 3.5%, because our budget just went up by about almost $400,000 just because of pensions and benefits for our municipal employees. So we really had to sharpen our pencils this year to keep it at a 3% increase, which is where we are, which is the highest increase in 10 years from the municipal side. That's wonderful, but your clients, my voters, when they open up their tax bill for 2024, they're going to say, the mayor said it was only going to be a $50 increase for an average home of $427,000, an average median home in Long Valley. But it's more like $200. What? Either this guy's lying or he can't do math. Well, I am an engineer, so I can't do math. But that's the truth, because both of our school budgets are going up by at least 3%. Now, the county has a flat budget, which is good. But if you were to look at your property taxes in Washington Township on kind of like a pie chart, like I said, I'm an engineer, so I like charts and figures. Only 18% of the property tax bill in Washington Township funds the town. First aid squad, the fire trucks, the police departments, all of our beautiful parks and trails, all of our 72 employees, all of them are funded by 18%, 18 cents on a dollar All the rest of that goes to the schools. We have the second highest proportion, behind Mendham, that goes to schools in Morris County. So, my challenge is, everyone yells at me for the fact that the taxes go up, but I can't really control it because I can only deal with my little piece of the puzzle. The good part is, we have a beautiful town. 40% of our town is preserved farmland, or preserved open space, so we can't build on it. The idea of someone selling a farm and putting a warehouse up, just not gonna happen. A lot of discussion has happened over the last couple of years for recreational marijuana. We didn't allow it in our town. Either the sale, the cultivation, or the retail value of it. And that's not because we don't have people who don't want other people to have the opportunity to grow or start a new small business, which is really what they are. It's because the state didn't give us any guidelines. They just simply said, well, you either make it all legal or make it all illegal, but if you don't do anything, the state's gonna tell you, we're gonna tell you what to do. So we took the conservative approach and said, until the state tells us what we can do, we're not gonna allow that in our town. I eventually think we will get to the point where we'll allow it, but not until the state gives us some better guidelines. So talk about these two parcels. One, if anyone lives in town and lives over by Kings Highway, which is over on the west side of town, there was a lot of talk about 6 or 7 years ago about the potential of developing that into a very large rental facility, something to the tune of 300 some odd apartment units. Obviously that wasn't compatible with that lot and that disappeared. We have been in conversations with that owner again to possibly put in something more, I almost said more better. I'm gonna smack myself there. More better, you know what I'm going? Something more better, more gooder. Something more conducive for that lot. And that is something more like 100 fee simple townhouses, which is much better for that space because it's really only the footprint of that old industrial building. Don't know if it's gonna go anywhere, but it is something we are considering and also helping us out with our affordable housing. You guys know there's really no place in Washington Township affordable to live. It's not generally where young couples start there unless they have a family property somewhere. And we need to fix that. And that's a property where we might think about that. Another option for us is over on Newburgh. So there has been the Heath Village West project for probably as long as I lived in this town. And it's never quite gotten out of, here's a really cool drawing and we want to put stuff on that side of the park. And Heath Village has continued to try to develop that. We also have a brand new pharmaceutical company that just moved in, SunCobb. I was just there on Newburgh with our congressman and our county commissioner director. Wonderful facility, 30 some odd new employees. All people live in Chester. They all live locally, so bringing more jobs to our town. That last parcel as you go down Newburgh before you get to the river, on that right-hand side, that's just that big open field with the white fence. Someone might be interested in developing that into a possible residential use. And that's really the only two parcels in town that we could ever do anything with. And we're being very careful with it. We don't want to just put up extra houses in town just to get more people here. We want to make sure that whatever it is, can the school system handle it? Can the water system, infrastructure handle it? Can the roads handle it with traffic? So we're looking at these things. Part of the advantage of being an engineer who been doing land use work for 30 years is I tend to look at things from more of a site compatibility standpoint and not from just a ratables. Too many elected officials say, we got to put a Target or a Walmart in because we need those ratables. We have to put a whatever in this empty lot because we want ratables. Well, we're not all about just making sure that we can get more money in our coffers. We want to do things that are compatible. If you go back 20 years in Washington Township, by preserving all the open space that the governing body did, is part of the reason why you don't really see any more development now than you saw 15 years ago. And that's, the downside is that when when the housing market tends to drop, well then the ratables in the town drop too, because we're kind of linked to those single family homes. So that's one thing, or a couple things that are going on. So you asked me to talk about this new law. Okay, so the state of New Jersey, we obviously we have a lot of farms out here, not just in Washington Township, but Chester and Mendham and so forth. And in the last few years, especially during COVID, the farms have been taking more and more advantage. And anybody who's driven past, any of our farms in the fall, know that it turns, what's that?
Like Orts.
Orts, Allsteeds, you name it. You see more cars with out-of-state license plates than you see from local state license plates, which I always kind of found amazing, but it kind of is what it is out here. And they've been taking advantage of the fact that they are farmland. And farmland, they fall under the Farmland Preservation Act. They can pretty much do whatever they want. The municipalities have no say in it. So if Kurt Allsteed wants to have helicopter rides, he can. There's nothing he can do because it's part of his business. I'm not picking on Kurt, I'll pick on Nicole now. If Nicole wants to have, if the Orts want to have, a certain number of festivals per year, they can. If the Backer Farm in Mendham wants to open up a brewery, if you've read the newspapers about what's been going on at Mendham, they have had one heck of a fight with the municipality, but they're permitted to do it. So I understand the state law is now going to try to have a little bit more municipal control over that, saying that they can only have a limited number of things going on in town. I think it's 24 or 25 per year, and they would need permits from the municipality. So I think that's what that is. But it doesn't preclude farms from doing things that are related to farming. Now, I'm not sure how a brewery is related to farming, unless you're growing up, or a winery is related to a cattle farm or something like that. But that being said, farmland out here is a key economic driver of this area. Part of the reason, we like to think we're, the economic engine of Morris County. We're not. We're rural. We really are. And if we restrict our farmland, that does take a hit for our municipality. So from what I understand of this, the purpose is to kind of allow farms more of a guardrail into what they can and can't do and how often they can do it. Now, I can tell you that the farms in Washington Township are always getting permits. They do follow the rules within the municipality, even though there's some gray areas. So we do know about what's going on and how things are. That's not the case in every other municipality, which is why I believe the state is passing what it's doing. As far as some other things, I briefly touched upon the budget. The big problem we have in our town, besides the fact that the schools take all our money and we have nothing to say about it, is our infrastructure. About 2009, 2010, the last time the housing market kind of took a precipitous downturn. Not only did it affect you guys in your market, but it affected us in the municipality because our taxes that we brought in went down just as much as the housing market did. The governing body at the time chose to cut in areas that they felt at the time they could recover from. And a lot of that was, for instance, road paving. And we're paying for that now. Those decisions that were made in 08, 09, 10, we're paying for that now. And the fact that we have about 145 miles of road in our town, some of them are still dirt, and some of them are moving towards dirt if you've driven on them. And we are now going to aggressively try to get that back. We have put about $1.5 million or more in our budget for the last 4 years to try to get caught up with our roads. Because if we don't have good roads, no one's going to want to buy a house on that road. I hear this all the time. Oh, it affects property values, and maybe it does. But now we're going to look at trying to aggressively get at that. We've laid the groundwork for possibly bonding about $5 million next year to have a complete overhaul of our road paving projects. And we've also taken the step, unlike any other municipality out here that I know of, and we just invested in what's going to be a comprehensive road program. So basically, if you guys have kids or grandkids that play like Sim City or any of those games, we have like a virtual little city. We're going to have someone create that for us with every one of our roads. And it's going to show us in real time, is this road a red, a green, or a yellow? When was it last paved? When was it originally paved? In some cases, in some developments, was it ever paved? So that when the governing body from going forward, from now until whenever, when we know we need to have roads paved, it's not going to be the squeaky wheel theory. And let's be honest, we're people just like anyone else. When a whole community comes to the township committee and says, we have the worst road in town, and if you don't get to pave our road, we're not going to vote for you. It's difficult to ignore that. But now we're trying to come up with a quantitative way to look at all 145 miles of a road. So that's going to be going forward. We're going to work on our infrastructure. We're going to try to look at these parcels of land that we have control over developing before the state comes in and has an intermediary. If you guys are familiar with the affordable housing law, affordable housing law basically says if you have a developer that says, we want that piece of property and you're not developing it and we think we can put 350 apartments on it, they can file with the state of New Jersey to become an intermediary. And if the state approves that, then they can come and put the 350 units on your lot, whether you like it or not. So we're very cognizant that we do have a couple of lots, and we want to get ahead of that game and develop them with what's consistent for our area that will help our town and also help people, because when people move to town and can get started, they tend to move up in that rank. What I've also found is that people who moved away from our town, let's say they graduated from high school, went to college and said, man, I'm never going back there again. Yeah, they're coming back. I see more and more people, now again, I've only been here 19 years. I'm not like Bill Rorick, who's been here 4 generations, but I see more and more people coming back and saying, I went to West Morris and now I have a kid and I want to be here in our schools. Because we know that our schools are really what get young families in Washington Township. We have nationally recognized high schools, maybe not nationally recognized grade schools or middle school, but certainly top of our state. You get what you pay for. You want good schools, you want the best teachers, you want the best programs, you pay for that. And that's kind of where we are with it. So I see the people coming back, and that's good, but we have to assist them by making sure that our town, our roads, our infrastructure can handle the more people that are coming in. Okay, so I talked for 10 minutes. That's about good. So I'll be happy to answer any questions you have, except for my weight and my golf score. Other than that, have at it. Yes.
The bridge project this summer.
A
Most
nightmare.
important question, how is it gonna affect a coffee potter?
Yeah, I had a meeting with those guys the other day about that. Actually, I wasn't really a meeting. I walked in to get coffee, and I didn't walk out for 25 minutes. So we call it a meeting. So the funny part about, well, that's the funny part, all bridges are county projects. And since no one here is related to a county commissioner in this room, I'll just lump this on then. This was supposed to have been done last summer. And we had all the contingencies in place. And then it just didn't happen. Who knows? They just didn't get to it. And then someone was nice enough to move it along by hitting it with a car. We had a minor accident where someone spun out and took out the parapet side, so the wall of the bridge on the church side. And then suddenly the county said, woof, I guess we should get to that project. So it is scheduled to be, I believe, 60 weeks, 60, but only completely closed for about 4 or 5 weeks. The idea is to have alternate lanes over the bridge, and we fought for that because we can't have our major north-south tributary going, up the mountain closed for the entire summer, which is essentially what it's going to be. But it will be closed completely for about a month, maybe 5 weeks, and then it'll be alternate probably into the fall. They're not going to start until school is out. If I had to guess, school is out on June 9th. I'm guessing they'll be starting on the 10th, maybe the 11th. So this summer, that area, you can still get to the coffee potter. From the north, you're good. If you want to come from the center of town, you're going to have to go on Fairview. So you're going to have to go, turn on Coleman and come all the way down Fairview, and then go to the coffee potter that way. Once they open that up, after, I would say right around July 4th would be a guess, then there'll be alternating traffic north-south, but it'll only be one way at a time.
And how long is this project gonna take? You said 60?
Yeah, I think that's, no, I think a half a year. I apologize, maybe 30 weeks. So, however, I think it'll be faster than that. Yeah, no, I think you're looking at, yeah, I'm sorry. I think you're probably looking into December.
Okay, thank you.
But again, the real headache when it's going to be completely closed should be a month tops. I'm hopeful that they'll get moving a little faster, and I'm also really hopeful that when they don't start getting into the structure of the bridge, they don't find out that oops, now we really got to go into work. The theory is they're not doing anything to the actual roadway, they're just going to be working on the sides. Now, if that's the case, it might go faster. But case in point, if you remember 4 years ago when they were milling and repaving the culvert, the small bridge on Nawright and Coleman, actually it was Nawright, it was north of Bartley, and they milled the bridge and they said, oh, look at that, there's these big holes, there's literally no subbase. And they had to close that bridge for about, I think, almost 3 weeks. I'm hopeful that doesn't happen. But just like anything else with road projects, when you're talking about bridges that have been there for 100 years, you got to open it up and kind of peek inside until you see what the what luck we have. So that's the idea. Hopefully it's not that bad.
Matt, are there any more traffic lights planned for Long Valley? We value our rural character here, and
Not that I'm aware of.
good.
The only thing we did is we did put in a bid to upgrade the light at East and West Mill and Schoolies in Fairview, the coffee, the restaurant. That light has not been upgraded since it was installed, which was our first traffic light. And it had, we are now gonna upgrade that with turn signals on there and the ability for, right now, there's no sensors on it. So, at night, it can't go to a drive sensor. So we're gonna have the whole thing, we got a grant with the state, and we've been moving along with that. The only other lights, I guess, per se, is we applied for and got a grant with the county Parks Department. Those of you guys know that we have the Columbia Trail that goes across a lot of really busy roads. I think there's 8 road crossings on the Columbia Trail just in Washington Township. And the county is going to be installing blinking stop signs at 4 of those crossings, I believe, Norwright, Schoolies, and you go further out to Middle Valley Road. So that's gonna be really good because there's so much traffic on the Columbia Trail. And I don't, for the life of me, I've been biking and walking on the Columbia Trail with me, my kids, my dog forever. And I still can't figure out why people don't stop when you get to a road. I mean, it's a freaking road, stop. But, I mean, anybody who's driven on Norwright, or you just see people come across the road. So now we're gonna put big blinking lights. If I could put gate crossings like it's a rail line, I would, but they won't let me do that. So that's the only other new lights that I know that are coming.
Along the lines of permits and farms and things like that. Talked to a couple of local farms lately about events that they do. And one of the complaints that I have heard is that there's so much paperwork to do to get the permit. If they want to bring a food truck or something onto the property as well, the paperwork is heavy. So I don't know if that's
I'm gonna call Barbara Streisand on that. The truth of the matter is that we try to make it as simple as possible, but it depends on what you want to do. If you want to just have an event, it's a 1-page form. Here's your event. And it's easy. There's no approvals. You want to add food trucks? Well, now you have to get, the health department has to look at it. You want food trucks, you want that have heat and generators and like that. Well, now our fire inspector has to look at that. And that's not any different in any town. But what we do have, and I'm not quite sure, I mean, we have a grid, a spreadsheet, literally, that anyone can go to our town website and go under permits and look, and it will say, what do you want to do and how do you want to do it? And here's a link that will take you to all of the forms you need to fill out. Any permit has to be approved by the governing body, good or bad, that's the law. We don't make that law, it's a state law. And unfortunately, for some people, they wait until the day, like they'll come today and say, we'd like to have an event on Friday. Here's the problem. We only meet twice a month. And I'm not gonna have a special meeting because somebody wants to have a food truck. We meet twice a month. Our meetings are all published. We know we always meet the 3rd Monday and the Wednesday before. If you don't get your permit in time to get on our agenda, you gotta wait a month. And I do know that many people have kind of been caught in that. They'll say, well, here's my permit application for, Friday's event, and they come to town hall and the clerk says, I'm sorry, they don't meet for 3 more weeks. Well, I gotta get my permit. I can't do that. That's kind of, so I know there's been some headaches with that. But again, the more stuff you wanna have on your event, the more people have to look at it.
I think a big part of it too is just education.
It is. And I think a lot of it's new too. I mean, you think about 10 years ago, the number of events they had just at Ort Farms. In the fall, they might have 4 or 5 events, maybe 1 event that had food trucks and rides and things like that. Now it's every weekend. And now you add that to all the other farms in the adjacent towns. And, pretty much from late August until November, it's crazy town out here. Yeah. So, I get it, but not that bad. Yeah.
The one strip mall, the oldest strip mall that had the PNC Bank and all that, it's
Dumpy.
dumpy. Anything going in there? Are we doing anything about that?
I wish I could. I don't own it. If I owned it, it wouldn't look like that. I did have conversations with the developer who purchased it pre-COVID. When the bank disappeared, he was going to put in his words, an international food court, which is why all that paper is up, because he was fitting out the inside. But he hasn't returned a phone call or a bill from the town in 2.5 years. So right now, the Krause is the only thing that's there. I think the pizza place might still be there, but that's it. I do know it is an eyesore. I wish I could do something about it, but they are, I believe, up to date with their property taxes, and other than that, until they put an application in, there's not a lot I can do. But yeah, I wish I could do something about that, because it's an eyesore. It's pretty dumpy looking. I'm not a big fan of it. You know, and people do use the Krausers a lot, although it's probably an equal number of complaints about the Krausers the town gets as the people who say that they like the Krausers in town. But it is, you know, it is what it is. He has his permits, he pays his bills, and he follows the law. So, you know, I'm a big believer in government needs to get out of the way and let you do what you want to do. And if you unfortunately want to do nothing, I can't kick you in the pants. I'd like to, but I can't. Yes?
What's happening with the water restrictions on top of the mountain?
That is a really good question. I wish I could tell you anything other than I don't know. I can summarize with this. So the MUA is not a part of the government. It's a separate entity. And that's for a reason. They have so much debt that I will never allow them to become part of the government. So much debt, and their infrastructure requires so many zeros at the end of the one to get it up to code that I don't know if they'll ever get caught up without a significant amount of bonding and whatever else. I'll tell you this, everyone who pays water and sewer in this town like me, your bills have gone up significantly in the last few years. And now that was earmarked, as they like to say, for infrastructure improvements. I'm waiting. Still haven't seen it.
So they're gonna continue them?
They are coming in front of the township committee on Wednesday night, so if anyone wants to come, you can ask the director, McAndrew, as many questions as you like. But he's coming specifically because they are trying to, not Fawn Ridge, one of the other developments, they're trying to make an improvement on the water lines. There's currently 2 water lines, sewer lines in that area, they're not connected, and they want to connect those 2 and upgrade the 2 pump stations, but they need township property to do it. So we're going to take the opportunity to ask Director McAndrew, you know, where are we with some of these improvements that you claimed were coming with this rate increase? The other thing that we're going to be talking to MUA about is for people who live on Fawn Ridge, and maybe you have customers on the Fawn Ridge, that Fawn Ridge Road we were supposed to pave last year, we just ran out of time. It got too cold and we started too late. So the poor people who live on Fawn Ridge have been driving on just a hellacious dirt road because we milled it and it's just been sitting there doing nothing. But Fawn Ridge is first on the list once it gets nice, which is probably going to be pretty soon. But now I hear that the MUA wants to put a 4-year plan out for redoing the water lines under Fawn Ridge. I said, whoa, time out. I'm not going to spend $250,000 paving a road that you dingbats are going to rip up and then put a nice little strip down the middle because they say they only have to repave the area that was affected. So we're going to have a little conversation about that on Wednesday night. But I wish I could tell you, you know, they leak more money, more money really, more water leaks out of their system every year than they can put in one of their pump stations. And that's an absolute fact. I'm not sure why it's not going to be addressed, but the MUA only serves about 30% of the town. That's it. So they don't have a big customer base to work from, and many people get served by the Hackettstown MUA or Chester. So they only serve 30% of the 75 some odd homes, 100 homes in this town. So I apologize for obfuscating, but that's kind of all I can tell you. They're not going to become they're not part of our government.
It's not going away though.
Probably not. I do know that we are in the, one thing that might fix that, the 2 things. One is they've had a plan to put a booster station, which is essentially just a fancy, forever, over by the Cuccinella School. Now we had a new superintendent come in who was much nicer and easier to work with than the last guy. And one of the first things I sat down with him and said, look, we have to work on this teeny little strip of land because they can't get their piping across it. But we finally got that done about a year or so ago, and that project should be moving. And once they fix that and the High Ridge Water Tower, which in their infinite wisdom when it was built about 50 feet too short. The High Ridge Water Tower, if you know the area on High Ridge Road out there, that's supposedly the high point of that area. Well, only the top 30 feet of that tower are actually high enough to provide water pressure. So here you have this 100-foot tower, and only about 30 feet of it, the water is actually usable. That should have been about 50 feet higher. They claim, they meaning MUA claims, that when they decided they wanted to build that tower, the community came out and said, we don't want to look at that. So they built it shorter than they needed to. To me, that's something you just have to do anyway because it benefits the community, and I don't know. At least that's what they told me. Yes.
What about the area down by Target? There's some open lots down there. Is there
There's two parcels there that I had, but one of which, that cornfield that's had the for sale sign, which is next to the radio station really, and the back is up against Target. I did have a developer I met with about a year ago that was looking to put either it was office retail, office research or industrial, a complying site in there. I don't know what happened with that because they had some water issues with Hackettstown that they were trying to overcome. So I'm hopeful that would be the only spot in town where we could put an industrial building. So that's there. As far as if you go down 46 like you're going towards Hackettstown from the Target west, we actually had 2 approved applications in those beat up old lots. The first of which was a 12-unit affordable housing apartment, which is almost right across from, that road on the back there is actually Mount Olive. And there's an affordable housing, I think a 15-unit right in the back side of there. This would have been almost the same type of thing on one of the larger lots where the, I think it's where the old fishing place was. And then in the adjacent lot, we had someone come in and we had an application that was approved to put a tiny little convenience store, which is basically nothing more than a shipping container. The size of a shipping container, where the sides come up and there was going to be like a drive-through little convenience store. They were both approved in 22. So, if they don't get their act together and get moving on it by the end of 23, we start over. I would love to get that strip developed, but because it's a tiny little postage stamp lots, it's difficult to find things that will really jam a square peg in a round hole. But I am confident that at least the residential component, those 12 affordable units, are going to go in. I was kind of hoping it would happen by now.
And what about like on that corner lot, like right by Target where it's open?
Across from Target?
There was one across from Target, I think right.
Yeah, so
on the
across
same
from
side.
Target, that was actually supposed to be Wawa. But the state of New Jersey said, yeah, we don't want that there because there's some wetlands back there. So Wawa said later, and they went around the corner and they put it over there. Good for Wawa, bad for us. No one else has approached me since then because once the DEP puts a stamp, once they put their stupid stamp on something, and that really was dumb. We could have overcome that. But Wawa said we don't want to deal with the headache, and they went around the corner. It was a better lot. They wouldn't have to deal with the left turn nonsense going, around the back of the Applebee's like they do. We had a much better spot for them. But again, going to my initial comment, thank you, Trent. I don't know if anyone's going to come in there. I'd love to. I mean, I'll talk to them. I've made it pretty clear that if there's somebody interested in developing in this town, I'm going to sit down. I want to chat with them. And I'm pretty open door about it. And I'm also pretty open about if you want to put something that ain't going to work, I'm going to tell you that from the get-go. So.
Is that the same issue with the old Hyundai buildings?
The Hyundai buildings, so there is an application approved for, Hyundai wants to convert, I want to say it's the old diner site, into a maintenance facility, but just for their, so that was approved as well. That went through the zoning board a couple months ago. And they're there, there's new ownership there, so I imagine that should get going again.
Anyone else? Matt, thank you, that was excellent.
Thank you very much, I
Thank you.
appreciate your time.